Welcome to a meeting of the Town of Barnstable Comprehensive Financial Advisory Committee. Today is April 8th, 2024. This meeting is being recorded by the Town of Barnstable and will be broadcast on Channel 8 after the meeting has been concluded. If there's anybody here who is recording through audio or video, please let us know. The agenda for this meeting is available on the town website. Chuck, if you would call the roll, please.
I will. Can you hear me okay now?
Now we can.
Good. Okay. I had you on remote speakers and they weren't working. So Lillian.
Here.
Hector.
I'm here.
Jim.
Present.
Chris.
Here.
Jackie.
Here.
Neil.
Here.
Tom.
Here.
And Chuck is here. So we have a quorum. We're good.
Thank you very much. Before we start on our agenda, I'd like to welcome Tom to our CFAC and let him introduce himself to all of us. And then we will introduce ourselves to you.
Great. Thank you very much. And it's really a pleasure to be here and an honor to be part of this organization, this committee. My name is Tom Keene. I live in Centerville. I have an extensive history. I'm a lawyer by training and by license, but I've also have an extensive history in finance, both in municipal government, nonprofits, and for-profits. I've been involved in for-profit startups. I was for a number of years a city councilor in Boston, and really hope that I can bring some skill and but probably unneeded skill to an organization that, as I read the resumes of all of you, probably doesn't need any more additions, but I hope to be able to add what I can.
Thank you very much. We welcome you and we look forward to your adding your insights and discussion to our deliberations.
Thank you.
Let us introduce ourselves very quickly to you. Jim?
Hi, Tom. I've lost my voice. I was at a trade show the weekend and in DC. So I'm a Centerville resident since 1990. I've been engaged with CFAC. This is my second time around with CFAC. I enjoy it thoroughly and look forward to your participation.
Let's see, Jackie?
Hi, Tom. My name is Jackie, and I am also in Centerville. Really interested in what's going on in the community and wanted to be a part of CFAC because of that.
Great. Neil?
Hi, Tom. My name is Neil Kleinfeld. I've been on CFAC for a mere 14 months and 3 days. So I'm still learning the ropes. Glad to have you.
Chris?
Chris Lozon, Marston's Mills, born and raised. I'm a mechanic by trade, but joined CFAC a little over a year ago. Just wanted to get more involved on the municipal side of things.
Thanks.
Chuck?
Chuck McKenzie. I've been involved with CFAC for a few years. I live in Cotuit and I spent my career in investment management. Welcome.
Thank you.
Hector?
Hi, Tom Keene. I'm Hector Gunther. I've been on the committee since 2018. I have a background in investment banking. I worked in Manhattan for 30 years for JP Morgan, Citi, and a couple of other firms, working with primarily large companies. So everything I've learned about municipal finance started in 2018, listening to Lillian and others who've been here a lot longer, and of course Mark Milner. He's been a great tutor.
Great.
And of course, you know me. I'm Lillian. I live in West Hyannisport, and I've starting my 12th year. And let me introduce you to Craig Tamish. He is our town council liaison. Craig?
Hi, Tom. How are you? Nice to meet you and welcome. I think you're going to find that this group is probably one of the hardest working in the town, as far as both the product that they put out and the time that they put in. Quite an ambitious and good group.
Right.
This is us. Okay, we can now begin the agenda. For some reason, I did not get the minutes of the March 25th meeting. Were they distributed by chance? Does anybody know?
Yes, I did send them out.
Oh,
Did anybody else get them?
I did
Yes.
not.
Let's see.
Yeah, because
I did
I
not
sent
get
them
it.
out.
Oh, I just checked my email and I can't find them.
Maybe I'm in your spam filter folder.
No, I checked that one too. Does
Well,
everybody else have it?
I don't have them either, Mark.
Let me hang on a second here.
Chuck, Jim, Jackie, Chris, do any of you guys have it?
I did not check.
No, yeah, okay,
I'm not sure I got it either.
okay. Well, let us table then.
Lillian,
Yes,
at the bottom of the 4-4 email, under the agenda and the meeting notice, are the
Yeah.
minutes from 3:25.
Yes, it
you.
was sent out 4/4 at 10:24 a.m.
okay. Well, I plead guilty. I have.
We can put them on the next agenda if you'd like.
Yes, I did not read them. So
We'll
let
do
us
that.
table those minutes to the next meeting. Moving right on then I'll turn it over to Mark, who's going to discuss two issues today. We thank everybody for the CIP report. We're now moving into the operating budget subcommittee. And so we're going to deal with the enterprise funds today and the general fund and fixed costs. So Mark, it's all yours.
Thank you, Lillian. And so first of all, I did email everybody the financial projections, budget projections for all the enterprise funds. Did you all receive that?
Yes,
I have that.
Yes, we have that.
Okay. Good. So what we could do, Madam Chair, if you'd like, is just to go through each one of those enterprise funds. And I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have on any of those. So starting with the airport, it's okay.
That sounds reasonable to me.
Okay. So what I'll do is
Go ahead.
I'll share my screen as we go through each of these. Okay, can everybody see that okay?
Yes.
Yes.
So this is the line item budget currently drafted for the Airport Enterprise Fund. It's about a 7.2% increase.
Mhm.
The major cost increases on the operating expense side of the budget are right here. The cost of jet fuel. As you know, we buy jet fuel and then we resell it. And that's probably the single largest revenue source for this enterprise fund is the sale of that jet fuel. So the budget for jet fuel acquisition is going from $5,625,000 to $6,300,000. And that's just based on projected gallons that they're projected to sell, acquire, and then sell, and what the projected acquisition cost is. Another cost driver is salaries and wages. $162,000 increase for permanent salaries and wages. This includes one additional full-time equivalent for another custodian that they would like to bring on. And then electricity of $66,000 based on the new supply cost that goes into effect on July 1, 2024.
Mark, are any of those wages increased because of
Yes, those
contractual
are-
terms, or is this just?
Yeah, these wage increases all include the the newly negotiated collective bargaining agreements with the labor unions. And so they include step increases, COLA increases, and the cost of the new position.
Mhm.
Okay, thank you.
And so those are the major cost drivers. I would like to point out that there's no surplus being used to balance this budget. It's completely balanced with estimated revenues. Again, the major source of revenue here being the sale of jet fuel, estimated to be $7,865,000 in jet fuel sales. The second largest single revenue category generated by this enterprise operation is land leases. Almost $1.8 million here for land leases on this line. Those are all the ground leases that they have. There's a lot of tenants out at the airport, both inside and outside the fence. Outside the fence being mostly the property located, the landing where the Kmart used to be on Route 132.
Yep.
That whole plaza that's being renovated, that's all under the control, owned by the town of Barnstable, under the control of the Airport Commission. And the land that's leased out there to the various tenants, and it's one major tenant, WS Development, that owns all the buildings out there that are being renovated. They pay into the Airport Enterprise Fund land lease payment every year. And so those are the two biggest categories of revenue for this operation.
May I ask you a question on that land lease? Is the land lease on that commercial property? I see that it went down by 86,000. Does that include the commercial property or the other properties?
All of it. It's all
of it.
And yep, inside
Okay.
and outside the fence. Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
There's also a land lease rental, which is the $432,000 that went up 11.4%.
Yep.
What one is that?
Off the top of my head, Lily, I don't know. Let me look that up and send you that.
Okay.
Those are more land leases. That might be the land leases inside the fence.
I see. Okay.
Off the top of my head, I'm not sure which particular. They have dozens of lease arrangements, and I'm not sure which ones they're putting on which line here.
Okay. It just caught my eye.
Yep. Good question.
Mark, I have a question about the airport, and this might be a capital investment question, but I seem to recall reading that Cape Air is planning to acquire some number of battery-powered planes. Do you know what the timing is for that? And do you know if any particular charging equipment is going to be needed for those planes?
No, it's a good question, Hector. I don't know the timing, what Cape Air's timing is as far as acquisition and implementation of those aircraft.
Right.
However, we do anticipate a capital improvement project to install charging stations at the airport for such aircraft. And of course, there'll be a charge for anybody that does use them.
Right.
The charging stations were part of the FY24 CIP, if I recall.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, so I believe money has already been set aside to move forward with that. I'm not sure what the status of the projects are at this point, though.
Yeah. Okay, thanks.
Well, it seems that the parking and the rental concessions are fine, but the other concessions, I guess those are inside the airport, seem to be losing money.
Which ones in particular are you referring to?
Well, it says miscellaneous concessions, we lost $800.
Yeah, these are small.
And then there's another one where we lost $3,000.
Yeah, advertising.
Yeah. There is a 3% concession went from 11,000 to 8,000.
Okay,
Okay,
we can give more details as maybe they combine those revenues on other lines, but
Okay.
it's an immaterial amount of revenue for them.
yeah, no, it's a very small amount, but it's still there.
I just noticed 4 lines below, there's a new item that's airport advertisement revenue of 3,000.
Yeah,
That could have been it.
So they may have just moved it to that line.
Yeah.
could be. Thank you.
Passenger facility charge, that's an add-on to the cost of a ticket,
Yes,
presumably.
correct.
Anybody else have any comments, questions on the airport?
I do not.
Okay,
Okay, so moving on to the next one, we have our Golf Enterprise Fund. So the Golf Enterprise Fund, this budget is going up 5.6%.
yep,
All the salaries and wages line here include all the contractual obligations under the collective bargaining agreements. There's no new positions being included. We are providing additional funding here for overtime in each one of their sub operations. And of course, health insurance, there's an increase for health insurance because we're going to 70-30 on the health insurance cost share. We don't have a factor built in for any migration yet. We're still working on what that might be. We just started our open enrollment period for health insurance. So we don't know yet if there'll be additional employees taking advantage of the town's health insurance programs that it provides. Other cost increases include $26,000 here for building maintenance, some additional funding for electricity, again, for those cost increases. And that's really about it. Some fertilizers and golf course supplies, some increases there. The cost of fertilizers, of course, continue to rise. And we're basically funding all the decision packages that they requested that we sent out to the group here, all the decision packages that departments asked for, and we are including all of theirs. And results in a 5.6% increase in their total operating costs of $236,000. This is all provided for with enterprise fund revenues from the golf course, with the exception of one transfer here from the Community Preservation Fund. The Community Preservation Fund is paying for the last year of debt service, the acquisition of that golf course. If you recall, that was an acquisition 20 years ago
right.
that the Community Preservation Committee participated in to keep that as open space. Because the owners at the time were talking about developing it into multi-unit housing, and the town decided that they wanted to purchase it and keep it as open space using community preservation funds to help with that acquisition. This is the last year, 25 is the last year of that loan payment. So it's been 20 years since that acquisition. And we are using $224,575 of their reserves or retained earnings, reserves, or whatever, however you want to call it, and to balance their budget and we do have a current surplus balance of $2,042,172. So this budget is balanced with enterprise fund and community preservation fund revenues. No general fund revenues are being directed to support this enterprise operation. And we still have adequate reserves to provide against any potential revenue retraction or unexpected cost increases.
How come the wages are going down, wages and salaries?
So it's just a reallocation of people's percentage of times between the different line items here. We have an 8,000 reduction here, a 20,000 reduction here, but there's being more allocated to this line item, resulting in a $24,000 increase, an $1,800 increase here,
Gotcha.
$37,000 increase here, and a $22,000 increase on this line. So it's just how they allocate their staff between these operational areas. But there's no change in the overall number of full-time equivalent employees.
Any comments or questions? I think it's good that they've restabilized themselves after the pandemic when we lost. Nobody was playing golf.
Yeah, golf is popular once again,
Yeah,
but it
it's-
remains to be seen how long they can keep this going because, as you know, during economic retractions, one of the first things people cut out of the budget are these recreational type of activities, and we could see some revenue reduction there when something like that occurs.
Yeah,
For now, it's strong. I mean, we're
it's
memberships continue to renew at strong rates. Daily greens fee players are coming out and playing. So long as the weather cooperates, we anticipate this operation to continue to operate well.
And compared to a lot of the other courses in the area, Mark, these are relative bargains for the experience you get. So I think they're well positioned.
Good.
that's our resident golfer speaking.
Yes. Well, one of them.
Thank you.
Very good. So with any other questions on golf before we move on?
No, it looks strong.
We'll move into the DPW Enterprise Fund operations then, starting with solid waste.
Okay.
Okay, so for fiscal year 25, there is a proposal to increase the residential transfer station sticker here, which is no longer actually going to be a sticker. You will no longer have a sticker on your vehicle because we implemented new technology out there that'll read license plates as you enter the facility. And so it'll be a permit now as opposed to a sticker. And the proposal is to increase that fee $15 in order to generate enough revenue to fully fund this operation. Of course, the major costs associated with this operation are the disposal of recycled materials, household waste, and other types of materials that are collected, construction and demolition material that are collected out the facility. We do see an increase in construction and demolition activity out at the facility. That's resulting in increased revenues here. So you can see the budget's gone up from $500,000 to $700,000 for that revenue estimate based on activity, essentially. But it's costing us more to dispose of that material because we're collecting more. And so the expenditure line item for disposing that material has gone up. So no surplus, however, is being used to balance this budget right here. There's nothing being used this year. We now
That's really
are
good.
generating enough revenue with the proposed fee increase to stop using surplus to balance this operating budget. The surplus in this fund is about, I think it's about $1.7 million, which is where we want it to be. That's about 6 months or half a year's operating budget. The operating budget is about $4.4 million now. The salaries here that you see include all of the step and COLA increases under those new collective bargaining agreements. Investment earnings are going up in every operation as we see investment rates improving. We're able to increase the revenue estimates across the board for both our general fund and our enterprise funds in that area. And of course, the residential transfer station sticker fee increase will generate, an estimated $137,000 more as well. That's what we need to balance the budget. And so this budget is balanced with revenues generated out of the facility, no general fund support is needed.
Mhm.
Mark, is there any limit to how far the reserves could go? Is it a percentage of budget or how do you figure that? I mean, if someone came and said, well, why are you upping the fees if you have a $4 million reserve?
Yeah, there's no limit as to what your reserve balance can be, but with all of these enterprise fund operations, we have to keep a reserve balance for a couple of reasons, or for many reasons. One being revenue retraction. We could lose customers. We could see amount of materials, or residents stop using this facility. Recycling revenue could decline. Investment earnings could diminish. And then you have the unexpected cost increases. And, if we start taking in more material, we come to the council for supplemental appropriations, and the only place we can appropriate that from is from their reserve. And so we want to protect the enterprise operation from revenue retraction, from unexpected cost increases. And we also use that surplus every year to fund capital program items. And so we did that again this year. I think we used about $400,000 of their reserves to finance their capital requests for fiscal year 25. So we don't want it to grow unnecessarily for that reason, because we don't want to overcharge customers either. But we want to maintain a balanced operation that provides a safety net for unexpected costs, a revenue retraction, and help augment the capital program.
Well, along that same lines as Craig's question, do you pay any consideration or give any consideration to what it would take a resident to have their trash removed privately versus publicly through our town? Is there any discussion on that at all? If a sticker costs $300 and something or whatever, I'm sorry, I didn't remember the price, but do we consider that against what a private contractor might charge?
Yes, I mean, we have to be cognizant of that, Jim, because, if we get to the point where, we're not competitive anymore, people are just going to use private contractors to pick up their trash at the end of their driveway. Well, why not? It's a lot more convenient to do that, but they charge it twice. I hear it's in excess of $600 a year to have a private hauler pick your trash up curbside versus the $335 that we charge currently out at the transfer station.
Okay.
And so we did a map one time, and I think we showed it to the committee before, where if you look at the customers where they live, they're all centered around the Marston's Mills, Centerville area. Majority of the customers close proximity to that facility because it's convenient for them. Yeah, I think most of your private contractors pick up in the outskirts of the town that are more physically far away from the transfer station.
Mark, I think a few years ago, wasn't a study done about privatizing the whole system, and the costs turned out to be somewhat exorbitant?
We had CFAC look at this several years ago and present a report to the town council at the time on what the options were. And yes, this was a more cost-effective model to continue to provide this service to the residents in this fashion. If the town were to go to curbside collection, we would incur a significant amount of cost in the form of capital acquisition, buying all the trash trucks that we would need and so forth, and hiring all the labor we would need, when the private industry can provide that currently. And we didn't want to take that, replace the private industry with a town-run curbside pickup. So yeah, but that study was, there was a comprehensive report that a previous form of CFAC completed And I can send that out to everybody if you'd like to read through that again.
An ignorant question, but are the private contractors permitted to use the transfer station? Or is it only private residents?
Only private residents. Yeah, there's
Yeah.
no commercial haulers can collect household waste and dispose of it there.
Okay.
Now, the increases in the health insurance, we're still waiting for decisions.
It has, and we have reached agreement with all of the unions on a 70-30 split, but the only thing we don't know is the migration.
Yeah, that's what I
Again,
meant.
we're in open enrollment period right
Yeah.
now, and we have to wait and see what, if any, of our workforce decides to come on to the town's health insurance with this new cost share arrangement.
So theoretically, the health insurance could possibly go up.
It could,
Uh-huh.
if there's greater participation than
Right,
than
right.
we currently have. Yes, it definitely will. It'll go
Right.
up by more.
Thank you. Any other comments on solid waste? Okay, we can move on to either water supply or sewer.
We'll do the sewer next.
Okay, we love the sewer.
Okay, this is the draft of the sewer enterprise fund budget. This includes that major subcomponent of capital program, also known as the comprehensive wastewater management plan. Of course, it's building out our sewer collection system, as you all know, which is part of the sewer enterprise fund operation, but it's just a major capital component, subcomponent of this operation. We do have a proposed 7% rate increase that we held a public hearing on last month. We're waiting to get feedback from the public on. And that has been factored into the revenue estimates here. And you'll notice here on this line, transfer from the capital trust fund, $4,250,000. That is the general fund support for the comprehensive wastewater management plan. As you recall, we started off with a plan to build the general fund contribution up to a total of $5,750,000 over a multiple year period by capturing some of that new property growth and redirecting it specifically to this program. And so we're up to $4,250,000. That will increase another $750,000 next year, and $750,000 the year after that, till we're up to that $5,750,000. So there is a general fund component here now that provides funding for the sewer enterprise fund, specifically for that comprehensive wastewater management plan component of this operation. And then we also have here a line item for $1,176,000, which is the transfer from our sewer construction and private way improvement fund. That is the fund that we created through special legislation, where our meals tax revenues go into and a portion of our rooms tax on traditional lodging. That money goes into that special revenue fund, and then every year we pull money out of that to help offset the cost of running the comprehensive wastewater management program, both capital and operating costs associated with it.
What's the code object? What is the object code in that column? What is that mean?
That's the object of expenditure. These are organization codes, and object codes are codes that identify in our enterprise resource planning system or our general ledger a specific revenue or expenditure account.
Just for my curiosity, what is the enterprise software that you use for the town?
We use the Munis program that's put out by Tyler Technologies. It's probably one of the more commonly used software programs for governmental entities across the country, at least at the local level.
Okay.
Mark, how do we determine how much is going to be transferred from that special fund every year?
So we take all the costs
Yeah.
that have an organization code here of 647603.
Right.
Those are all costs associated with managing the comprehensive wastewater management program, staffing,
Ah,
operating costs, debt service.
gotcha.
We add all that up, we get the total costs, and then we reduce that by the general fund contribution of 4,250,000, and that gives us the amount that we need to pull out of that other account to balance that operating budget.
I see. So the line item 647603 is the personnel affiliate with us working on the CWMP.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. So any line item that you see here with that org code of
Right.
647603 is
I
going
got
to
you.
cost specifically with that comprehensive
Right.
waste.
Now I got it.
So if we go down to the last page here, you'll see the debt service. 647603 here, it's going from $507,000 to $1,751,000 because we issued a couple of new loans for the sewer expansion work. And these are the estimated loan payments that we'll have to start paying next year. So here comes the debt service that we've been talking about all these years. It's starting to come on the books. As we issue these loans, these are going to be loan payments that we'll make for the next 20 to 30 years on all of these sewer expansion projects.
Now, all of these, I have a question about these long-term debts and the amount that we have to pay. If it's going to be included in the sewer and enterprise fund, will it show up in the fixed cost as well? Debt service?
No,
No.
the debt service for the comprehensive wastewater management plan will show up in the sewer enterprise fund.
Aha.
The only thing you'll see in the fixed cost is the general fund debt service for general
I
fund
see.
projects.
Huh. Very interesting.
Yeah, because we track all of our debt service is tracked by general fund and enterprise fund. So we segregate all that out.
What will happen when we issue more general obligation bonds for the sewer projects?
They'll become loan payments within the sewer enterprise fund, and we'll need
I
to.
realize that, but we won't be generating enough revenue necessarily to pay for the debt service on that.
Well, that's what we've been talking about. How come the capital projects in the fiscal year 27 that you've identified in your the CIP subcommittee identified in your report.
Right.
That we hit a wall there where we can't issue any more loans until we identify new revenue sources to pay back those loans.
Okay.
Mark, I'm curious, you break out principal long-term debt, 2 lines, interest long-term debt, 2 lines. You do the same thing with interest short-term debt. Why the segmentation?
It just helps us track the cost both on the principal and interest side. We could all just put it on one line, debt service.
No, my question is, you break it, there are 2 line items for principal, for example.
Yeah, okay. The principal that you see on line item that has an organization code of 647600.
Yeah.
That is debt service associated with the current facility, and it's paid back through user fees, and it's not part of the comprehensive wastewater management plan.
Oh.
That's why we break it out, because we don't want the users of the current sewer system to be paying for the expansion of the sewer system itself. That the comprehensive wastewater management plan can't be put on the backs of sewer ratepayers. And
so sewer, i.e. people in Hyannis today.
Yes, people who have been tied into the system that have been, getting sewer bills for years. We segregate all the cost of building out the public sewer system from the operational costs associated with the existing system, using those org codes. so that we can track what the rate increases necessary for the current sewer users are, and not charge them anything for the expansion of the program.
Okay, and then 603 is the expansion.
603 is the expansion.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions or?
Yeah, I had a question, Lily, and it's Betty Lutke.
Hi, Betty.
Hi. Hey, my question is, I think I've maybe asked it before, is, we're doing this in-house. And I wondered, when was that decision made to do it in-house? Who did the analysis for that? And is that revisited from time to time that I'm assuming we did it, well, maybe it's a bad assumption. I don't know why we did it. Is it more cost effective, or is it we feel like we'll have more expertise? I'm just curious how that's been evaluated and if it continues to be evaluated. I don't know, Mark, if you know.
Yeah, no, that's a great question, Councilor Lucky. And it was, the evaluation to do it in-house was initially determined by the Public Works Department, and we're going to have them here at next week's CFAC meeting on 4/15, and they can provide you, more details as to the reasons why it was determined to do it all in-house. It's a couple of reasons that are right off that I can think of off the top of my head, or that they've stated, are that the cost, number one, to hire engineers and outside engineers, designers, outside project managers, to do all of this work, they would charge us more than what it would cost us to pay them. Secondly, the expertise out there, the capacity out in these entities, these private entities, to perform all of that work is limited. And they would have, in the quality of the work, they've had some problems with as well in past projects. And so it was their determination that it would be best done in-house. And I think they're going to be reviewing again that decision as part of their annual 5-year update. But that's a great question to raise at the next meeting when we have Public Works here.
Well, yeah, no, I'd really like to know that if it is still the most effective way to do it. I mean, this is getting to be such a big monster. And the other piece of that, I heard recently, now that the windmills are spinning, there's been some sort of heat issue. I've heard about it, but I haven't gotten the details, that we have to go even deeper now with our, because I know that was an issue that came up on Strawberry Hill, the depth that we had to go to with the sewer line. Is that a lesson learned? Do you know I don't know if you know any more about this.
I'm sorry, I don't know anything about that.
Okay, I just heard it raised the other day, and it just perked my ears up, because again, those are my constituents on Strawberry Hill that were just flabbergasted when they saw the depths that they had to go with the laterals to their houses. And now I'm maybe hearing, but maybe I'm not hearing correctly, that we have to go even deeper because we're starting to see a heat issue. So
I don't know about that, but we did install risers on that line to make the connections.
Oh, no, I know we did. We did that, that modification. We came back, but it's just, I heard it the other day and I didn't have an opportunity to follow up. And it gives more rationale, because we are tied to this wind thing to a large measure, or whatever, a moderate measure, that's another level of maybe expertise that we're now attaining that nobody else has. I don't know if any other municipality is trying to work with a wind farm to put their sewers in place. So again, it adds another level of complexity. And, so no, I'll look forward to asking the question next time. Thank you.
You're welcome.
If I might, in the fiscal 25 CIP decision packages, DPW quoted, and I'll read it. Their analysis has shown that keeping design work in-house through at least preliminary design and managing construction, including inspection, in-house can save the community over $15 million in phase 1 alone. So that's the most recent input that we have on terms of justifying the in-house.
Thank you, Neil.
Any other comments on the sewer?
But I won't take but a second on this, but it's a huge push and pull, the outsourcing or keeping it internal. I'd encourage anybody that wants to see or listen to a good story is done by WGBH, The Big Dig. And that was a 20-year wrestling match between, do we do it outside with consultants or keep it internal? And they eventually came to the right decision, but I think it's going to be a combination of good people on both sides and to come to an agreement and what's the right approach to be taking. But I'd highly recommend, if you got 7 hours to spend on a good podcast, that's a good one.
Okay, we can move on to water supply.
Okay, this is the water supply enterprise fund budget. It's going up 740,000 or 8.66%. Some of the cost increase as are new loans that we're taking out the fund because they're 22 and 23 capital programs. So you can see here there's an increase of over $500,000 in loan payments between principal and interest. And the other significant cost increase is just the annual contract with the private vendor who manages the water system for us, Viola, and their costs are going up $287,000 next year, 7.62%. Again, the budget includes all of the decision packages that they've requested, which the main one is that private contractor cost increase. And salaries and wages include collective bargaining increases, cost of living increases, and so forth. And then on the revenue side, we have a 5% proposed rate increase for the users on that system. Again, to cover those cost increases of managing the water system, additional debt service for building, implementing capital improvements to the water system, and so forth. So those are the major changes to this operation. We have one outside revenue source to balance this operating budget right here, which is a transfer from a trust fund of $1,037,000. That is the transfer from the stabilization fund that was created by the council, whereby we credit the host community agreement payments from the Vineyard Wind project into a trust fund for water stabilization. And so this allows us to mitigate the water rate increases by using the revenue from that host community agreement. And that allows us basically to keep that rate increase down to 5%. Because we have $1 million coming in from the host community agreement that we can use to balance this budget. No general fund support is provided to balance the water supply enterprise operation. And yeah, that's it. Are there any questions?
Mark, the public hydrant maintenance fee, is that charged back to Hyannis Fire? Or
No, it's not Hyannis Fire. No,
no? Okay.
it's not Hyannis Fire, no. It's customers on the system.
Okay.
What is the length of time for our host community agreement?
It's 25-year contract.
Uh-huh. And so is it essentially $1 million a year?
So there are two sets of fees. Lillian and Mark, please jump in here. There's 16 million
Right.
paid over 25 years, but each year and that's the HCA fee, and it's $1 million. The nominal charge is $1,540,000, I think, but that HCA fee is reduced potentially down to zero by the amount of personal property taxes paid by the developer. And that's the result of the assessment by the assessor in the town
Right.
as to the value of that personal property, the infrastructure that's been installed in our roads. Mark, do you know, this will be year 3 that we've gotten an HCA fee from Vineyard Wind?
I think so.
2024, yeah, yes,
Yeah.
will be year 3. And so
Okay.
the agreement works in, there's a there's a cap of $1,534,000 annually in the host community agreement, whereby that's the total amount of money that the Vineyard Wind will pay the town in a combination of property taxes and host community payments. So if their property tax bill, for example, ends up being $1 million, they'll make a $534,000 payment to the town of Barnstable under the host community agreement.
Okay.
The property tax bill initially have been very small as they build out the system, and the value is going to come on our property tax assessment records over a number of years. We're into the 3rd year now of value. Next year will probably be the last year, and we'll have the full value of the system on our tax rolls. Their tax bill for fiscal year 24, I believe, is around. I can't remember what it was for this year. I can look it up and get it to you, but I think it was around $500,000, and so they're expected to make a host community payment of $1 million to get to that $1,534,000. So we have money in this stabilization fund from those host community payments. They were very large payments at the very beginning because their tax bills initially were small. But eventually we expect their tax bills to get closer to $1 million a year, which will result in a host community payment of somewhere around 600, anywhere from 500 to 700,000.
That makes sense.
And
Thank you.
so the amount of money that we anticipate in the longer range projections for this operation are that the transfer from that trust fund to balance this operation is expected to go down, because it's $16 million, as Hector said, over 25 years. We'll get paid that $16 million over a much shorter time period based on current tax rates and assessed value for that system. I don't think it's going to take 25 years for them to pay us $16 million. So it'd probably be closer to 15 years.
So if we enter into another host community agreement with another wind generator, then that would be transferred also into
No.
this fund.
Not
Yes?
necessarily, no.
Not necessarily.
No. Every host community agreement payment that gets created, if another one gets created through another project, we will be going forward to the town council with a recommendation as to what to use the money for.
Ah, okay.
But the one specifically from Vineyard Wind was brought forward to the town council with a recommendation that be used to stabilize our public water, drinking water system, because we wanted to protect that and mitigate the costs associated with managing, the significant costs associated with providing good drinkable water. And so that's what we recommended with the Vineyard Wind agreement. They agreed. They created the trust fund to put this money into it to help mitigate the costs.
Thank you. Anybody else have any comments or questions?
Yeah, just for background, why did it go to water instead of sewer?
Because when we were negotiating the agreement with them, it was all about protecting our public drinking water, right? I mean, we wanted to make sure that that groundwater is protected. We wanted to provide some stabilization in the rate increases for our drinking water system. It was more connected to drinking water. There's a direct connection to drinking water. You've heard all the public debate recently about the wind projects and how important it is to our drinking water supplies to be protected. And so that's why we wanted to dedicate it to that.
So essentially, the town council decides which fund to transfer it into.
Yeah, it'll be a town council decision as to how
Right,
to use
right.
the payments, any payments that we receive under a host community agreement. And
Great.
frankly, $16 million wouldn't do much for our comprehensive wastewater management plan. It wouldn't
Sure.
even, for about half of the Centerville project that just came forward to the town council. And that's it.
Any other comments on the water supply?
I just see one line on there, and I don't know if you can answer this, Mark, but there's a line towards the bottom on lead and copper sampling. There's no dollar amount, but are there lead pipes in the water system at all? Do you know?
I don't know, Chris. I think they're doing that. Yeah, I don't know. I think they're doing a survey on that.
Okay.
I don't know off the top of my head, but this is a revenue line. Yeah, I think it's an old line that they used to have. They would charge entities for sampling at their request for
Okay.
lead or copper.
Chris, that question came up at the water meeting we had a few weeks ago. And Sam Wilson mentioned that they did not have any lead pipes, but they do have some lead connections going into houses that go back many, many years. And they are researching exactly how many they have and how that can be mitigated.
Okay.
Just I have another meeting to go to, a civic association meeting at 7, a Zoom meeting. So when I drop off, it's the time, it's not the company.
Thank you for coming.
So if I disappear, that's why.
That's right. Thank you.
Thanks.
Any other comments or questions about the water?
Yeah, Mark, I noticed on this budget and on the prior budget, there's a line item, it's a very small dollar amount called longevity. What is that for?
Oh, yeah, under our collective bargaining agreements, when employees reach a certain number of years of employment with the town, they receive a longevity payment. So for example, I think after 5 years, you might get a $250 longevity payment.
Okay. All right.
It's a bonus for sticking around.
Not a big bonus though.
Well, it's a nice recognition. Okay, we can move on to the next enterprise fund.
Okay, we're going to jump into the Marine and Environmental Affairs Enterprise Operations now, starting with the Marina Enterprise Fund. We operate 4 town-owned marinas, Gateway, Bismore. Those 2 are located over in Hyannis Inner Harbor. We have Prince Cove down in Marston's Mills, and of course, the Barnstable Harbor Marina up on the North Shore inside Barnstable Harbor. So this operation covers all the costs associated with managing those 4 town-owned marinas, with the majority of the revenue coming from docking fees that we charge for vessels that tie up to our public marinas, as well as slip fees for boaters who want to lease one of our available slips. And then we have some other miscellaneous revenues for parking and vending machines and so forth. So again, this operation completely self-supporting, no general fund support is needed. It has minimal full-time staff associated with it. A lot of the staffing is part-time seasonal wages. That's why you see a temporary salary wage line here for $166,000. Yeah, that's most of the cost is in that labor and employee benefits. And then of course, there's some loans that we take out to provide improvements to the piers and the wharfs and do the dock replacements necessary at these facilities, and just a host of operational cost increases that they've asked for, which they can provide for with their current year revenues. And so the budget's going up 9.3%. They're generating revenue to cover that cost increase of $74,000. We do provide them a transfer from the general fund, but that's to offset the cost of that comes out of their budget for the visitor center down in Bismore Park. The visitor center is not a marina facility. It is a public facility. And so the electricity costs and the maintenance of that facility is carried under their operating budget, but then we turn around and we reimburse them $30,000 to cover that cost. They also receive a transfer from a trust fund here of $37,800. If you recall, we had to rebuild the Barnstable Harbor bulkhead almost 20 years ago. And at the time, this enterprise operation could not finance the total cost of that bulkhead replacement. And so at the time, the town council decided to split the cost of that 50-50 between the general fund and the enterprise fund operation. We are nearing the end of that loan payment for that bulkhead repair. So they do receive a transfer from the capital trust fund as well to help offset the debt service associated with that project. But for the most part, they are self-supporting. We are using $25,000 of their surplus to balance their operating budget. They do have a $1.4 million surplus. Pretty good size surplus. It's in excess of a year's operating budget. But we have a very large project looming on the horizon for this enterprise fund operation, and that's the replacement of the Bismore bulkhead. And so the plan is to use a portion of that surplus to help offset the cost of that improvement. Any questions on the Marina Enterprise Fund?
No, it looks good. Thank you.
Okay, so no more questions on that fund. We'll move it to the Sandy Neck Enterprise Fund operation.
Excuse me, Mark. Lillian, I have to drop off now. Sorry, I have
Okay.
another commitment. But
Thank you.
Good luck. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Hector. We still have a quorum, right?
Right,
Yes.
we do.
We do.
Okay, good. So the Sandy Neck Enterprise Fund, again, this is to self-supporting. Most of their revenue is generated from off-road vehicle permits, parking up at the Bodfish Park area, up at the top of the road there. Beach stickers, we allocate a portion of the beach stickers to this operation every year, about 4% of the beach sticker revenue based on parking spaces. That allocation is determined based on available parking spaces at each one of our town beaches. Cottage leases. We own the land out at Sandy Neck. The cottages are owned by individuals. And so we lease the land underneath those cottages, and they pay us a land lease for that. So there's a few different types of revenue sources here. The town of Sandwich provides us revenue every year because we allow the town of Sandwich residents access to this beach, because you have to go through Sandwich to get access to this beach. And it's been a long-standing agreement between the towns to provide Sandwich residents access to this beach, and the town of Sandwich provides us a payment for providing their residents access to this beach. And so it's about a 1.2, almost $1.3 million a year operation. We are using $109,000 of their surplus to balance that operating budget. They have a surplus of almost $1.3 million. Again, this is another enterprise operation with a large capital improvement on the horizon, which is the relocation of the parking lot up above behind the bathhouse. The plan is to relocate that parking lot back behind where it currently exists because of the coastal erosion that's occurring up in this area. And so that's another expensive project. We plan on using some of the surplus to help offset the cost of that capital improvement. And the revenue increases that you see here, there's no fee increase for this enterprise fund operation next year. The revenue increases are basically as a result of increase in activity. We're seeing the off-road vehicle portion of the beach become very popular, even though we're challenged with endangered species migrating out there, limiting the access to that section of the beach for a period of time. Principally the months of June and July, you can't get out beyond a half mile most of the time because of the nesting shorebirds out there. But once they fledge, we can open the beach back up. Usually in the month of August, you'll see that happen. But it's a very popular place, May, August, September. And we get a lot of ORV stickers sales to out-of-town residents. If you ever take a ride out on that beach and during the summertime, you'll see license plates from Rhode Island, all over New England and New York, essentially, New Jersey. People come up here and they buy the ORV sticker, even though they're only here for a couple of days, and they go out onto the beach. So it's been a very popular activity for visitors as well as residents.
Any questions or comments on Sandy Neck?
I'm just curious about the cottage leases. Are those negotiated on like a regular basis, or are they just transferred like between family members, or how does that work?
Yeah, that's a great question, Chris. I believe they're 10-year lease agreements, and it's kind of a marriage of inconvenience out there because, you know, you've got somebody who owns a cottage out there, and if we didn't allow them to renew their lease, how are they going to get that cottage off of that land?
Right.
And they've done some of these cottage owners have done some major renovations out there. And so generally the leases end up being with the same cottage owners. And I have not seen that change much in my tenure here.
Okay. So it's just kind of a formality. They just, maintain the status quo kind of.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Any other comments? Okay, we can move on to, I guess we've only got two left, PEG
Yeah.
and HYCC.
We'll jump into first we'll do the HYCC. This enterprise fund operation, this is the one enterprise fund operation that does receive a significant general fund contribution because they're limited as to the revenues that they can generate out there. Most of their revenue is generated from ice-related activities, the rental of ice time. And there is just so many hours in a day that you can rent ice. There's a number of hours during the day, in particular the evening or the night hours and early morning hours that, that there just isn't enough. There aren't user groups out there to rent ice to. So, and we need to maintain our market competitiveness. We can't go up too much on the cost of renting the ice for an hour. Otherwise, we'll lose customers. They'll just go elsewhere. And they won't want to use our facilities. So we have to maintain, some awareness around what the market rates are for ice rental in the surrounding area so that we can keep the customers that we have coming here, continue to come here. So there's the amount of revenue that they can generate is limited, principally due to that fact. But we have we do receive again, this operation does receive a major contribution from the general fund. And that's illustrated down here on these two lines here. It's about $2.8 million is a direct transfer from the general fund of $1,406,000 to help offset their operating costs. And then there's a contribution from the capital trust fund of $1,460,000 to pay their debt service. We have debt service associated with the building of the original building of this facility. which was back, I think, in 2008. And then we have made several improvements to the facility since then that we've had to borrow money for. And so those loan payments are included in this operating budget, and then we provide a funding from the capital trust fund to pay those loan payments. And that's all considered a general fund contribution. As far as cost increases go, it's the salaries and wages for our full-time staff, increased costs in overtime and seasonal wages. Electricity is a significant cost at this facility. You have to, it costs a lot of electricity to make ice. And again, that rate increase is going up on July 1 of 2024 under the new contract. So there's a large increase for electricity costs built into this budget. Some maintenance agreements on the equipment that we have in place there. We want to maintain that equipment in good working condition. So we have outside maintenance agreements with vendors to come in and service that on a regular basis to make sure that we maximize the useful life of this equipment. And then, of course, we have here debt service going up because we are issuing a new loan this year to finance some capital improvements that were authorized a couple of years ago for the roof out at the facility. Any questions on this enterprise operation?
I noticed that we have the expenses are more than the revenue. So where is that $45,000 coming from? Yeah, that 45.
Yeah, that 45,000. Yeah. So that
is that going to come from the general fund?
No, it's going to come from their reserves.
Okay.
So we're going to use their reserves to balance that. That's a late adjustment that we made to this budget. We'll probably make a couple of more before we finalize it, but any balancing that we do is going to come from their reserves because we've capped the general fund support to the numbers that you see here.
I see. I didn't know they had reserves.
Yeah, not much, but
yeah, well, that's
a little bit.
Yeah. Okay. Any questions or comments on the HYCC? Okay. And the last one is the PEG.
Yes, so PEG stands for Public Educational and Governmental Access Channels, for anybody who's not familiar with that. We have a licensing agreement with Comcast to provide us cable service in the town of Barnstable, internet and TV cable. And in exchange for that license, they provide us funding, or at least a license payment every year. And that's the funding source for this operating budget. We're budgeting $877,000 next year from that revenue source. That approximates what we get from that licensing agreement. And it's all the licensing agreement is based on the revenues that Comcast generates in the town of Barnstable from their subscribers. We get a quarterly payment from them, along with the revenue reports from them. They also provide us capital funding every year as part of the licensing agreement, $67,000 in capital funding for various equipment that we need to replace on a regular basis in order for us to provide that public access, those public access channels. So you have basically three channels. You have your government access channel, which is the town of Barnstable's channel. You have the Barnstable Public Schools channel, and then you have Cape Cod Media Television, which is, I think, out in Harwich now. I think they used to be in Dennis. They may have moved to Harwich, but there's another that's the public channel whereby anybody can go down to their studios and produce public programming or get their public programming produced by them. And as part of this agreement with Comcast, we have to provide that channel as well, funding for that channel as well. So they get a share of the licensing revenue that comes from Comcast. We have a number of staff that are paid out of this enterprise operation. You're familiar with Sarah Beal. She's one of the employees that's paid out of this operation. A portion of Lynn Poyant. There's a few other videographers, as well as a couple of three school department employees that get paid out of this who run Channel 22. Well, it used to be Channel 22, but it's a school's public access channel. And that's really what their major operating cost is. Personnel, the benefits associated with the personnel, some iNet maintenance, some internet access charges, some supplies and equipment that they need to run these public access channels. And the licensing agreements limit us as to what we can use these monies for. So we can't use them for anything else other than costs associated with running these public access channels. So we can't use it for teacher salaries or police salaries or DPW equipment or anything like that.
Who imposes that restriction, Mark?
Pardon me?
Who imposes that restriction on how
That's
we
in
can
the
use
licensing agreement.
itself?
Yes.
Any comments?
Oh,
Okay,
makes sense.
that takes care of the enterprise funds. We Mark, are you still up to do the general fund and fixed costs?
Yes, I am. If you want to
Okay.
continue there, we can do that.
Well, we'd love to do it.
Okay. So I sent this out last week to everybody as well. This is, we've seen this before.
Yeah,
I thought it'd be worthwhile to go through it again as, you finalize the report on the operating budget. It starts off here with all the various general fund revenue sources by major categories. We are increasing our property tax levy by the maximum allowed under Proposition 2.5, which is the $3,590,000 increase here that you see. We are expecting new growth to come in at about $1 million. In addition, we have two exclusions that we can add to the tax levy: the Cape Cod Commission assessment, which is the CCC environmental tax, that line that you see here for $692,000, and then our share of the debt service to build the Cape Cod Tech High School, which was approved by the voters back in 2019, and we can add that debt service to the tax levy as well. After setting aside about $1.4 million in an overlay reserve, this is the reserve for abatements and exemptions that we have to set aside because we're not going to collect all those property taxes, because some residents will be eligible for exemptions. Some will likely receive abatements as they contest their assessed values and so forth. And so that's how we arrived at $149 million projected to be available for funding general fund operations from property tax revenues. Now
Mark,
we have our other, yes.
Before you move on to that, I have a question. I wonder if we could get an estimate of the property tax revenue if the residential exemption had remained at 20%.
It doesn't change, Lillian.
It wouldn't change at all.
Residential exemption doesn't impact the amount of tax levy that we raise. It only shifts the tax levy between taxpayers.
Okay. I just wanted to know if there was any impact on the revenue.
Yeah, the same thing with a split tax rate. If we were to implement the split tax rate,
so we just shifted it.
We're just shifting taxes. We're not
Gotcha.
changing the tax levy under either scenario.
And you say shift taxes, could you define that a little better? Where are we shifting it to?
So with the residential exemption, you're shifting a portion of the residential property tax levy within the residential class from primary residents, those who declare Barnstable as their principal residence, to people who aren't domiciled in Barnstable. So all your second homeowners, essentially, they're going to pay more.
Gotcha.
Also, primary residents who declare Barnstable well, yeah, residents who declare Barnstable as their primary residence and their assessed valuation hits a certain dollar amount, they're going to pay more in taxes under the residential exemption as well. So it shifts property taxes from lower value property owners to higher property value owners and non-domiciled resident
Right.
people in Barnstable.
Okay, thank you.
It's not an easy concept. It's a difficult program to administer. A lot of paperwork.
Yeah.
The other tax categories, we see a pretty healthy growth projected here of 581,000, most of that being motor vehicle excise. We've had history here now of motor vehicle excise coming in at over $9 million. So we're boosting that revenue estimate from 8,030,000 to 8,557,000. Want to protect ourselves again a little bit against the downturn in the economy in the event that motor vehicle excise taxes start to trend the other direction. We saw that happen dramatically during the recession back in 2008 to 2010. For example, we saw our motor vehicle excise tax collections fall by over $1.5 million during that recession. So we just guard ourselves a little bit against another event, not to that degree, but a little bit.
Mark, can I ask, is there I don't know how to ask this, is there a effort to prognosticate? Does the probability of a downturn shift from year to year, or is it just a perpetual assumption that it could happen, and so we need to be careful and prudent when we do our budgeting?
Yeah, it's a good question, Chuck, because history has showed that about once every 10 years we see some sort of recession, right? We're in an unusual time right now. We haven't seen one since 2008. So we're going on almost 20 years since the last recession.
Mm-hmm.
But eventually we'll see something. We had one in the 80s, we had one in the 90s, we had one in the early 2000s, we had one in 2008. We're overdue for our next one, I would say. It will come. I'm not sure what form it'll take this time. I wouldn't doubt that it impacts property values, because the housing market is still strong. I don't know how to figure this housing market out with interest rates the way they are and property values still maintaining the value that they are. Usually you would see, under that scenario, property values to go down, as sales would start to trend downward. We're not seeing it. Sales are sales levels of properties, residential property is still strong. They're not falling by any significant amount by any means, even with these high interest rates. So it's a tough one to figure out. And where will the next economic contraction come from? It's hard to tell. Obviously, of course, the world events could cause it. A war, for example, and high cost of oil, and things like that. But if I could project when the next recession would occur, I'd probably be somewhere higher up in a governmental organization at the federal level, maybe. But
no, it's a fair answer. Thank you.
We have state aid is level funded here. There's really no significant change to state aid, either upwards or downwards. We were hoping to see a much better result out of the proposed Chapter 70 numbers for fiscal year 25, but they used a much lower inflation rate in their foundation budget than what they had been using for the past few years. And that resulted in minimal Chapter 70 aid increases for communities.
Mm-hmm.
There's been a lot of advocacy at the local level trying to get the House and Senate to push those numbers upwards when they come out with their budget proposals. Charges for services, we're seeing, continued strong revenues here in this category, mainly beach sticker and beach parking revenue is where this comes from. And we project a $300,000 increase there just based on trends and activity levels. There hasn't been a fee increase for a couple of years now, but activity levels have increased. We have various fees across all departments, and we're seeing, again, just based on trends and activity levels, no changes in what we're charging. $148,000 increase in that category. Fines and penalties, we are becoming, a more aggressive in the tax liening collection process. So we're increasing our estimate there by $250,000, which is most of the increase that you see here for fines and penalties.
You use third-party services for that, Mark?
We do. We've actually recently hired a law firm out of Boston, Brown and Company, to assist us in communicating, reaching out to property owners in tax title to negotiate payment arrangements, and they have worked out very well for us because it's just, I think a letter coming on on an attorney's letterhead provides a lot more interest in the taxpayer than coming from the town's tax collector. It wakes them up a little bit to see that letter because that we're serious. We need to collect the taxes. Everybody needs to pay their fair share. You can't just ignore your tax bill every year and continue to add it to your outstanding liability, and it's costly. I mean, they get charged 14 or 16% when they go into tax title on any outstanding principal that they owe, and so they communicate effectively. They work out payment arrangements. Some of those payment arrangements end up being in full, and we've seen some pretty strong revenue collection this year. Licenses is most of this category is made up of entertainment and alcohol licenses for business establishments and restaurants and bars and etc. They have to pay an annual alcohol license fee to the town. Doesn't change much. No change in the fee. It's just historically this has been pretty level.
Okay.
In the other revenue category, we have a couple of large categories here that make up this. The first one being in earnings on investments. At any point in time, we have cash sitting in multiple financial institutions, and we try to make that cash that's on deposit earn something as it sits there. We don't want it sitting in non-interest bearing accounts, but we also want to make sure it's safe and that it's liquid, because we have vendor bills and payroll that we have to make every single week. And so we need to make sure that the liquidity is there, that we have enough liquid cash to meet those obligations on a regular basis. But our number one priority is safety. We do not want to participate in risky investments with tax dollars. So that's our number one priority when it comes to excess cash on hand that we have deposited in financial institutions, liquidity being our number two priority and yield being our number three priority. But we are seeing the yield improve just on the basis of interest rate increases. So as you all know from a personal experience, probably what you can earn on a certificate of deposit or what you can earn on a money market account has significantly improved over the past year and a half. And so we're seeing that in our actual revenues that we're earning. So as we went through all those enterprise fund operations, you'll see that the increase on the earnings on investments for them has gone up. Same thing in the general fund here. We only budgeted $500,000 for earnings on investment in 2024. We're going to come in well over that. And so we're increasing that revenue estimate to almost $2 million in fiscal year 2025. The other one is renewable energy revenue. This is revenue we receive from solar arrays. that are located out at the transfer station and the airport. And they're producing a lot more revenue for us than they have in the past. And so we just hope for sunny days to continue. And if it does, then we'll make this type of revenue. But it has been based on what we're getting and what we received in fiscal year 23, what we're seeing in fiscal year 24. We're increasing that revenue estimate by $700,000 to 1.2 million. Those are the two big revenue producing categories, line items in this area of the general fund revenues. Then we get into permits, and most of this is building permits, wiring permits, plumbing permits. A lot of activity out there. People doing renovations still, new construction, all of that generates permit fees. And so we are increasing our estimates based on trends over the past few years and what we're seeing this year in activity. And our building commissioner has confirmed we've got a lot of stuff in the pipeline. And so we think that we'll be able to generate this type of permitting revenue next year. Special assessments is a small category. This is predominantly made up of assessments that are added to commercial property taxpayers' tax bills. If they don't file an income and expense report with us on an annual basis, our assessing operation mails every commercial taxpayer an income and expense form, which they need to complete and send back to us, because we use the information on those forms to assist them in valuing commercial property. If they don't return the form, they get a $250 special assessment added to their tax bill. So that's the predominant source of that revenue.
Mark, can I ask you a question back on those solar arrays? Yeah, is what we get from that, are we selling those as RECs?
No.
And are we selling the power or just selling the power?
No, we don't. We're an off taker. So these solar arrays are not owned by the town of Barnstable. They're owned by private entities. We gave them the right to place their solar arrays on our property out at the airport and a transfer station. In exchange for that, they pay us based on the production that those arrays produce. And so that's what these payments represent, our share of the revenue that they earn off of the electricity that those panels produce.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome. And the airport gets some revenue out of this too. So you'll notice there's a renewable energy revenue line item in the airport enterprise fund as well. And then we have transfers, which are which come from special designated revenues that by law have to go into special revenue funds, and then we take them out of the special revenue funds to offset the general fund operating budget. And examples of that are the Waterways Improvement Fund, embarkation fees, wetland protection funds, and so we also, the enterprise funds reimburse us a sum of money every year to offset support that they receive from the general fund for costs budgeted within the general fund that go to support the enterprise operations for things like the procurement staff, the accounting staff, the treasury staff, employee benefits like retirement payments. Those are all part of a formula, an indirect cost worksheet that we've developed, approved by the Department of Revenue. And this is $3.7 million is what the value of those services are. And the enterprise funds, the 9 enterprise funds reimburse us for those services. Then we have a small pension trust fund that we use to help offset the pension assessment. And then we're using $3,475,000 of our general fund reserves to balance the operating budget next year. Most of that's for health insurance, and then $3 million of it and then 250,000 for the town council's reserve fund, and $225,000 for an estimated snow and ice deficit that we will incur this year when we close the budget out. So we have a total of $210 million of general fund revenues estimated, which is about 6.6% more, $13 million more than fiscal year 24.
How does that number compare to the year before, prior years? Is that, it seems like a significant jump. That's pretty good.
Yeah, it's a strong number. We had a similar increase last year, but it was more attributable to a significant increase in Chapter 78.
Right.
But it was around the same percentage last year as well. Just it was made up of different categories. It was more state aid last year and less on local receipts. This year it's more in local receipts and less in state aid.
On the surface, that sounds good.
We were able to, yeah, we were projecting, at least a $3 million increase in Chapter 78 again. Didn't materialize, but when we looked at our local receipt revenue growth, actuals from 2023, how they were trending in 2024, we were able to make that up by increasing our local receipts by $3 million, essentially.
Mark, the open budget that's on the web, where the 197 from last year budget is now shown as 200.2. What makes that $3 million up of increased budget versus the plan?
Yeah, I'll have to do that reconciliation and get back to you, Neil.
Okay.
I'll have to take a look at the data. We upload a data file once a week, I believe, to that website. So it could just be a timing issue.
Mark, it's probably the surplus used to balance the transfer for the
Okay.
modules.
Yeah, so this number here, no, that's only 250,000 in FY 24. So it might be something else, Gareth. But let's take a look at that and see what the difference.
It was the reimbursement to the capital trust fund that we recorded.
Oh, okay. And that's not shown in this spreadsheet. That's what it
It
is.
wouldn't be.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand that.
Gareth, you want to explain that?
We did a supplemental appropriation for the school department to procure modular classrooms.
Oh,
this
okay.
year.
Got it.
So our
Yep.
system has picked that up as a revenue line or transfer into the general fund.
Yeah, and I didn't add that 3.5 million on the spreadsheet, Neil. I neglected to add that to this spreadsheet, but
That's
what-
okay. I was just trying to keep, the numbers change so often. I'm just trying to keep track.
Yep.
Thank you.
And so then we move into the fixed costs, and this is the other area we wanted to review tonight was the changes in our fixed costs, starting with the first category, which is school assessments. We have an assessment from the Cape Cod Regional Technical High School, which is actually projected to go down $188,000 in fiscal year 2025. The reason for its decline is that we are now, the students from Barnstable attending that school represent a smaller percentage this year than they did last year. Because they allocate the budget based on the percentage of the student body from each participating community. And so since our percentage went down, our share of their budget went down. The Commonwealth Charter Schools is an assessment that we receive from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And these are for students that attend from Barnstable that attend Commonwealth Charter Schools. And that's principally the Sturgis Charter School here in Hyannis. They have a couple of campuses. We also have students attending Cape Lighthouse Charter School. I believe that's out in Orleans. And then we have School Choice. School Choice is a program where families can elect if your school district allows it, families can elect to have their child attend a public school outside of Barnstable. For example, Dennis, Yarmouth, Mashpee, Sandwich, if they wanted to do so. We also take in students from other surrounding communities under the school choice program. So while there's money going out, there's also money coming in, but this is the going out cost. So those are the costs that we incur under the school assessments category. Moving into employee benefits, we make that contribution to an OPEB trust fund every year. We're trying to build assets for that promise to our employees that we will be providing them health insurance upon their retirement. And so we're trying to build an OPEB trust fund to meet that obligation. It's similar to a pension obligation where you're promising a pension to your workforce when they retire. And so we want to build up the assets like our pension system's trying to do. We want to do the same thing for our health insurance upon retirement of our employees, so that we have all the money set aside for their pension and their health insurance when they retire. So we've been increasing that by $50,000 every year. And then once the pension assessment is paid off by 2035, I believe it is, we'll be able to dedicate more resources to this liability. We provide workers' compensation, of course. We have to by law. And so we have a line item there for that. That's not changing. $900,000 has been sufficient. Retired teachers' health insurance is an assessment that we receive from the state. When teachers retire from the Barnstable Public School System, they go into the state's health insurance plan, and they're covered by the Group Insurance Commission. And then the Group Insurance Commission produces provides an assessment out to every participating community in the Commonwealth for the cost of their retired teachers' health insurance. We have non-teacher retiree health insurance. So these are, again, all the retirees who weren't teachers. We provide them a portion of their health insurance coverage as well. And then we have active employees' health insurance. This is the big one. This is the one that's going up from a 50-50 contribution to a 70-30 contribution. That $3.4 million budget increase includes an estimate for three factors. We have an 8% increase in premiums next year. We have a 20% increase in the town's cost share from 50 to 70. And then we have a factor built in here for potential migration. That's the big unknown. We won't know what our total cost is until open enrollment ends, and open enrollment will not end until the end of the month of April. And by that time, we will have finalized our operating budget. So we have to prepare an estimate as to what migration will be. And then we may have to come back and ask for a supplemental if we underestimate it. And then we have, of course, Medicare tax, retiree payouts, life insurance, unemployment, and the other big one is the pension assessment. We belong to the Barnstable County Retirement System. Every member of that system receives an assessment every year from Barnstable County Retirement. And the good news is our assessment's only going up 1.4%. Their total overall pension assessments are projected to increase about 5.3% a year in order to meet their goal of paying this unfunded liability off by 2035. But we're a smaller percentage of the overall system this year in terms of payroll. And so our assessment is only going up 1.4%.
I also imagine they had some kind of positive actuarial experience kind of from investments, if nothing else.
Yes, that's a good point, Chuck. Thanks for mentioning that. That is the case. I think they use an investment return assumption of 7% in their actuary uses that in looking at their unfunded pension liability. If their actual performance is better than that, that could help and reduce our assessments. And then the other fixed cost categories, of course, we have debt service. Strangely enough, the expiring debt service that we have is almost equal to what we're estimating new debt service is going to be. So that line item is basically level funded. We're issuing a bond in June. We won't know the interest rate on that bond before we set the budget. So we have to prepare some estimates on what we think that will come in at. And so this budget includes the estimated debt service on that bond issue in June. We're increasing the contribution to the capital trust fund by $1,128,000. That includes the factor for two items. We include we increased the base contribution from the previous year by 2.5%. And then we're also increasing it by another $750,000 a year for the comprehensive wastewater management. That's part of our 5-year plan to provide more general fund resources to help offset the cost of implementing that program. We are projecting an increase in our property and casualty liability insurance. We won't have the premium renewals in until the end of June. So we're estimating that to be about $100,000. We're providing an increase in the grant to the 7 village libraries in the town of Barnstable. We grant them money every year to help offset their operating costs. And a 5.78% increase is being proposed. That's similar to the percentage increase in the municipal operating budget that we're drafting right now, that we will be bringing forward to you for your review. And pretty much everything else is level funded. We do have a small snow and ice deficit for this fiscal year. We budget, I think, $975,000. But our actual costs for fiscal year 24 are running about $225,000 more than that. And so we have to raise that next year. The only area in the budget we are allowed to deficit spend under state law. And so we have to build that into the budget projection. We have to raise it next year. It comes right off the top of available revenue. For everything else, we have to provide for that first. So it's almost $1.6 million in other fixed costs. And then we have state and county assessments, Veterans District, Old Kings Highway, Greenhead Fly Control, Mosquito Control, air pollution, and so on. Those all come through the state or local entities like the Veterans District, and our costs for those entities are all going up $112,000. So that leaves us $137 million available for municipal and school operations, which is about $6.9 million more than last year. And based on our 60/40 revenue sharing agreement, $4,158,000 is allocated to the school operations, and the balance of $2,772,000 to our municipal operations. So same information you've seen before. The numbers have changed a little bit because of that Chapter 70 revenue figure not coming into what we were originally projecting. Better pension assessment than what we were originally projecting. We lowered that number. The regional school district number came in better than we projected. I think we had the same number in here for health insurance in the original projection that we provided you. Those were the major changes. And then, of course, the adjustments we made to local receipts to help offset that reduction in Chapter 78 that didn't materialize. Those are the major changes from the original projection you saw.
Thank you. It looks like the fixed costs have gone up by about 9%. Is that right? It's about 70. It looks like it's about $72 million. And that's before the open enrollment ends in April.
Yes, I think that's the number
yes,
I gave you
yeah.
earlier today was about a 9% increase, I think.
Yeah, I think it looks like a 9%. Last year we were at a 6.4.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's health insurance. I mean, that's
yeah,
the
it
big,
is the health insurance.
that's the big change this year. You know,
Uh-huh.
we've had a real difficult time hiring. One of the factors that we identified that often came back, the feedback we got from potential candidates is that you don't pay enough. You don't provide enough in health insurance benefits. I can't work for you. And so, you know, we had a workshop with the previous town council. Went over the challenges that we're having in recruiting. Health insurance was one of the major challenges. We're one of the very few communities at 50-50. And the only community on the Cape, I believe, at 50-50. And so it puts us at a competitive disadvantage when it comes to recruiting. And so we identified, of course, housing's another major issue in recruiting. But so we identified that as an area that where we can make some improvements to help us with retaining current employees and hiring new employees, because we have a lot of vacancies still. And we're hoping that this will help us in the recruitment of filling those positions.
Thank you very much. Does anybody have any questions about the general fund or the fixed costs, expenditures?
No more for me, Lillian.
Just fine.
Thank you.
I thought the presentation was excellent.
It's always excellent. You will find that out. Okay. Chuck, we're going to have our next operating budget committee meeting next Monday at 6 o'clock.
We are, yes.
Yeah. And DPW will be presenting. And any other member of CFAC who wants to attend is perfectly welcome.
Yeah, thanks for setting that up, Mark.
Yeah. Will we be, I just want to ask you a question, Chuck. Will we be discussing any drafts at that point? Or do we wait till the 29th? What's your pleasure?
Yeah, maybe what we can do at the DPW meeting is just to do a general check-in to see if people are comfortable with what they're working on. And we can work on kind of consolidating drafts well in advance of the 29th. I don't want to back into too much and have people feel rushed, or especially if we have changes we need to make. So if that sounds reasonable, you know, I started to work on my sections. I should have a good feel by the time we meet with the DPW if I think there's a problem, and I would just ask everybody else on the committee the same thing.
And if we have our first draft, should we just send it to you?
I think that'd be awesome. Yes.
Okay.
I may leverage the guy on my screen who's top center, Mr. Formatting up there, and see if Neil can help ours look half as good as theirs is.
He has volunteered to help us if we need it. So it looks like we're going to do DPW next week, the 15th. And then on the 22nd, we'll have the police at 6 o'clock and the schools at 7 o'clock. And then on the 29th, we'll have an operating budget subcommittee meeting again.
Correct.
Okay. Does anybody have any comments or questions or new business to bring up?
Lillian, just to follow that up, I think maybe you already mentioned this and I didn't hear it, but April 22nd at the next full CFAC meeting, we will have the Barnstable Police Department here
At 6.
At 6, and the
Yep.
school department. They're in negotiations every Monday evening with their labor unions, and so it's difficult for them to come on Monday evenings, but they think they can make it by 7 p.m. on the 20th.
Yeah. I had mentioned it a little bit earlier, so it's good to have it reinforced. So we're good.
Thank
you. Does anybody have any comments?
I just want to ask Lillian if you had received any feedback at all from our presentation last week on Thursday.
I have not.
Okay.
Betty,
give you some
do you have any
feedback.
comments?
I think that was an amazing presentation. I really like that you had the recommendations on there. I think that's a great way to proceed. I've always thought I'd like to see you folks more engaged, giving us recommendations, because you just have that expertise that we don't have, and you look into stuff in depth that we don't have the time to do. And it would be nice to be influenced by your expertise. I really appreciate it. So I'd like to see more of that and go into your recommendations. Absolutely. That was the best presentation I've seen yet. I mean, that was great. And I think other people share my viewpoint on that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The kudos goes to the CIP subcommittee. They really worked very hard on it. And it showed. Okay, not hearing any suggestions for anything else? Any matters to come up before the committee? Is there a motion to adjourn?
Right?
Is there a second?
Second.
Is moved and seconded to adjourn this meeting. Chuck, if you call the roll, please.
Oh, Lillian,
Here, yes.
Jim,
Yes.
Chris,
Yes,
Jackie.
I think she dropped off.
Oh, she dropped. Okay. Neil,
Yes.
Tom,
Yes.
and Chuck is yes. So we have enough to adjourn.